Welcome back to the Tiga Tactics Podcast, a show about self-defense for civilians by civilians. We discuss all things personal protection, including martial arts, combat sports, and street combatives. Our resident MANs, martial arts nerds, include co-founder of Tiga Tactics and holder of 8 black belts in different styles, Dr. Conrad Bui.
Hello, everybody.
We also have black belt in 4 different styles, and the other co-founder, Patrick Vuong.
What's cracking, combatives, people?
And I'm your other co-host, active duty Army Special Forces soldier and champion obstacle course racing athlete, Evan Ultra-OCR man Perperis. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the why and how of cross-training in different martial arts styles. And today's episode is special because for the first time ever, we are all sitting in the same room. We are huddled around the one microphone I have recording this podcast in slightly overcast California, actually, today. So,
yay!
So we're going to jump into the episode. This is actually a viewer-requested episode. They specifically wanted to talk about some of the why and hows of cross-training in different martial arts styles. And I think the man who's experienced the most different martial arts styles, I think we're going to turn it over to him first, Dr. Conrad.
Wow, we could talk about this for hours because when you talk about cross-training in martial arts, you just talk about martial arts in general. And for me, there's many benefits of training martial arts, and I think if we touch on each of those benefits, you can also discuss different martial arts and how each of those different martial arts have have strong points. In other words, a certain benefit a martial arts will have, and another martial arts might not have that benefit. So let's just talk about the first word, martial. Right, I think a lot of people cross-train, myself included. I started cross-training at an early age because I wanted to know, quote unquote, quote, the truth in combat, which style was most effective. And that is one thing that a lot of people argue about over the internet. Not just what styles is effective, but even in a certain style, which lineage is more effective, which technique is more effective, which tactic is more effective. So that truth in combat, I think, is a good starting point to discuss because that's where a lot of people come from. So when we look at styles, I also want to put a caveat out there. Of all the styles I've trained, I haven't found one perfect style. There's some styles that I like, and if I've pressed, I wouldn't know which one style. If I could only practice one system, I wouldn't know which one that is because they all have their strengths and they all also have their deficiencies as well too. So talking about the martial part, anyone want to add anything to that?
I mean, the martial part is obviously preparing for combat, for war or fighting, as that may be. So I think, especially post 1993 with MMA, there's a lot of people who will go, well, we don't need to do traditional martial arts anymore. I can just do MMA, and that's combining, quote unquote, the best of everything, according to some people. So what's some of your thoughts on that?
I think if we're just looking at a system for combat, MMA is a great system, and it's not even a real system because by definition you're mixing all these different martial arts. I would say that if that's the direction somebody chooses to go, that's great. That's a good thing about martial arts is there's many different reasons to train it. And if you're just looking for a way to fight or more into the martial than the art, then MMA is a great starting point. And I think there's also other systems that you can look into that'll help improve your odds of coming out of a violent encounter if that's your goal. I still think cross-training in different combative arts. So I like to look at martial arts in 3 broad categories. If you can think of a Venn diagram with these circles, there will be 3 circles under this broad topic of martial art. The first circle would be traditional arts. Arts where you generally have a uniform, you might have rank, and there's a lot of crossovers as well too. But you might have rank, you might call your instructor by a certain title, whether that's Shifu or sensei. You might have protocols like bowing on and off the mats. You might have terminology that you use from that country as well too. And then you might have, not all traditional systems have this, but a lot of traditional systems have forms like katas that you will learn as well too. And so you can look at that as one circle, a traditional system. Brand names might include karate, taekwondo, hapkido. Then you have combat sports as well too. So you have traditional, and then the second circle would be combat sports. So combat sports brand names would be MMA, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing. And then you have combatives. Brand names might be Krav Maga, the Army combatives, Tiga tactics even. I consider that kind of just combatives. And combatives you could think of as all martial and no art. And these circles, they all cross over, and where they all cross into is martial arts. And so those are just my three big categories that I like to think about. And so if somebody's training just for the martial part, it would be good to look at the other two circles and look at, what did they do in the past? What have they done traditional wise from hundreds of years ago, and that you might bring into your combatives, because there might be some things that they've considered that you haven't considered. And then of course bringing in the combat sports into your combatives, into your martial part of training, I think is also really smart, because the combat sports, we're talking about thousands of very intelligent people, as well as coaches and athletes, trying to always find the cutting edge of how they can one up the next camp. And so studying the combat sports, if you're just into the martial part, I think is a smart thing too. And so those three circles, they generally intersect very well.
So let's talk a little bit about the why specifically. So like, why would someone not just do combat sports, or why would someone not just do traditional arts?
Yeah. There's the obvious answers, which I'll get to, but I'll talk about it more from almost like a spiritual point of view, which is that I started doing martial arts because of Bruce Lee, and I was just a little kid watching him on VHS, and it tapped into something. I'm like 2 or 3, and I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy? I gotta be just like him. And like, I could barely speak English properly, or even Vietnamese. I could barely speak properly, period. And I already was like doing the wata and the trying to kick, and it was like it tapped into something that was primordial. It was written in our DNA. Humans are meant to be able to fight. To be honest, whether we're fighting saber-toothed tigers, dinosaurs, depending on your science, obviously fighting other humans. It's in our DNA, especially for men. It's written in our DNA to be able to fight. And so I think when I saw him as a little kid, it tapped into my DNA. And so it's a way for me to kind of connect to our ancestors. It's kind of like a weird spiritual thing, but it's a way to connect to our ancestors. It's a way to be human and express ourselves as humans. So that's why I do it. When people ask why, it's like Bruce Lee. And then I thought more about intellectually, why did Bruce Lee inspire me to do it, right? And so that's kind of where I came from. And the other reasons, obviously for self-defense, like as Conrad said, the martial aspect is the self-defense aspect. You've also have the more academic reasons, which is like the history. When you learn a martial art, you learn the history of that martial art, and if it's taught properly, you'll also learn the history of the country that it came from. And that also ties in with the culture of the country that it came from, which also ties into the language of the country that it came from. So whether you're learning Japanese martial art, you'll probably pick up some Japanese language and culture. If you're learning, for example, Chinese martial arts, you'll definitely learn some Chinese terms. You'll learn where it came from, why it came from, and Kung Fu is a great example, because there are literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of styles of Kung Fu. And so why do people who practice praying mantis do it this way versus someone who practices Tai Chi? And so you get this kind of cool cultural, historical language lesson as you're learning this martial art.
Yeah, and the more arts you learn, the more of that culture, different cultures you get to experience.
Yeah, so from what I'm gathering from talking to you and then from my own personal experience, the why, like Dr. Conrad was saying, creates another Venn diagram, right? So like why might be physical fitness. It might be preparing for self-protection. It might be learning about a culture. It might be the social atmosphere at the gym you go to.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of, and I think everyone who's coming into martial arts is going to have a different balance they want. You know, like I don't think anyone goes there and is like, I want zero social interaction. I definitely don't want new friends.
Right.
You know, but like that might be why some people stick around at the gym. And maybe the social culture in is not good, and that might be the reason some people leave that gym and find a different gym.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think the why is really going to be person dependent, and it's going to kind of depend on who, you know, your goals, and that goals can change throughout your life, right? Like I'm getting ready to retire from the military, so maybe I need less combat application, and maybe I want more art. Maybe I want to learn more about history of a specific area of the world. I know I like to travel internationally, and when I travel internationally, like to me, I think it's cool to like study some of that martial art and then go visit that country, and then you feel like a little more connected to the culture, even though I'm not of that ethnicity.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's important to respect everybody's reason for training. And I see this online quite a bit. Oh, that's somebody might post their form that they did, or some drill that they're doing, and then inevitably you get this troll that says, oh, that would never work on the street. I don't know why they're doing that. That looks so ineffective. That form sucks. You know, respect each other's reasons for doing it, and their reason might be completely opposite from your reason of doing it. And like what Evan said about socializing, I know one guy at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym where I teach. He's there totally for socializing. I remember when COVID hit, a lot of us, we're going to drill at home. We're going to do online classes. We're going to keep it going. Nowhere to be found. And as soon as class started back up again, he's just back in just to hang out and socialize. And I think there's so many benefits to martial arts. It's important to realize that there's different benefits and to respect other people's benefits. And it might not be even close to what you want, which a lot of people online think it's all about fighting, and it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the why. But so if you one martial art may be filling one need, and then you may have to do another martial art to fill another need, right? Like I really love the competitive aspect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think that's great. I love it. To me, it's like one of the best workouts I can get in martial arts. I like that competition feeling. I do some striking sparring. I don't like going super hard in striking sparring because I want my brain cells. You know,
you might need that.
And you know, I'm over 40. I don't, you know, the chance of me starting a professional fighting career at this point is pretty low, right? So, yeah, you know, different needs, but I still want to know striking, right? Because almost every fight, right, starts standing. They say like the statistics is what, like 80% of fights go to the ground supposedly. That's like one of the statistics that no one seems to be able to pull the actual data from. I've heard some people say like, no, that's a police data because police are pulling people to the ground. Anyway, almost all fights start standing on your feet, right? So I like being able to have a little bit of competency in every range of combat and be able to, right, because your enemy has a vote on sort of where the fight progresses.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the things that kind of plays off of what Conrad said, the social aspect, for me, it's definitely the social aspect, and it ties in with another reason why I do it is just therapy. It's my form of psychological therapy, emotional therapy. I need it. If I don't train, I actually get very agitated. When COVID happened, oh man, I was ready to punch holes in walls. Like something was off, you know, and like I was easily agitated. I was a little bit less understanding. But then once we were able to get back and train in person, suddenly I was easygoing again. I was like real chill again all of a sudden. And I'm naturally a very chill person, but If I can't train if it gets to like 2-3 weeks, a month off, oh man, I start having issues mentally, emotionally, psychologically. So martial arts is just a great way of relieving that stress.
Do you feel the need that like one specific style can fulfill all those needs, or do you feel like that emotional outlet, you need multiple styles to fill multiple gaps, right? Because we're talking about training in multiple styles, and I know we've covered a lot of like, well, this is great for any martial art, but you know, the multiple aspects.
Yes, that's a great question. I would say that they're all good. You know, let's say we're doing Tai Chi and it's just the forms that will help a lot. But I definitely get, if I'm stressed out a lot, I will get the most relief doing something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai, where I have the chance of either being knocked out or choked out. You know, I think that the threat of like, oh, this could be the end of my life, and then you come out the other side and you realize, oh, I'm totally safe. There's something extremely satisfying and relieving about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just like all my activities to be painful. I mean, ultra running, choking out in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or even like I said, I'm not crazy about hard sparring, but like even if we're just doing like bag work or pad work, and I got a really good training partner, and they're moving, cutting angles, and I'm, someone who's strong who can give good feedback. I find that as like a enjoyable stress relief.
Yeah, Mr. Glenn for punishment. So back to cross training. For me, some people, they like just one style, and that social group is good enough for them, and that's enough stress relief, and they find all the benefits in just one style, and that's cool too. You know, I think when we cross train, every benefit I see multiplies. So if I like the social aspect, I'm able to hang out with many different groups. I have a group of friends from Silat. I have a group of friends from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have a different group of friends at Muay Thai. And so those benefits that we've been talking about, when you train multiple arts, I think they multiply.
Absolutely.
I also think it kind of prevents, I know we're all martial artists, so sometimes we go down the martial art deep dive and the niche culture of it. I think it helps break down barriers, right? As far as, some guys they fall into one specific style and they're like, well, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the best, and if you don't do it, you're an idiot, and nothing else matters. Right. And then you guys based on every style, right? Wing Chun is the best. I only do Wing Chun. Right. It's aggression, center line attacks. Like, if you do something else, you're stupid.
Right.
But I think when you train in multiple styles, you start to see like the benefits and the drawbacks of each one, and you can, you may not like Tai Chi, or you may not like Taekwondo, or whatever the style, right? But like, you'll be like, oh, well, I can see why they did things a certain way. That's not the way I would do it. But I think it kind of helps break down those barriers, and makes the martial artist a more inclusive place, because the guy who does Tai Chi in the park, if he's getting up and training every day, probably has a lot more in common with the BJJ guy than they have like differences, right? Because they're both getting up, they're training, they're both dedicated to an art, they're both doing physical activity, and there's a lot more, I think, common interest than there are of differences.
And it's so easy to look at the differences. I just recently had a conversation with another Silat person, and the Silat system I practice, Sorak, it developed differently in the U.S. than it has been in Indonesia since the 70s. And one person said to me, oh yeah, there's a lot of differences. They do this different, they do that different. And just like what you said, Evan, I thought there was a lot more in common than in difference. And I think it's just human nature to look and go, oh, they're doing it different. And so henceforth, it's probably inferior to what I've been doing. Yeah. It's just human nature.
It is. I think part of that comes from, the whole idea, again, written in our DNA. We see a different tribe. They could threaten our resources. They could try to take our family, kill our family, take our food. And so it just builds from that. And it's so tribalistic, like people are just or they're different from me, so they're automatically inferior, and we're better than them. And just in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we talked about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Oh, I only knew no gi because gi Jiu-Jitsu is so fake. It's so unrealistic, man. I'm like,
when am I going to be walking around in a gi?
right, exactly.
Will I walk around in spandex all the time?
Yeah,
exactly.
Don't you wear a jacket with a collar? Right. I don't know, man. But to me, I like Conrad said, I try to look at the similarities. I don't look at like, oh, he's wearing a rash guard and he's wearing a gi. I just think of it, oh, we're all doing jiu-jitsu. We're all learning grappling, you know. Right. It's almost ignorant to only look at the differences. I think you have to be much more open-minded to look at all the similarities as well. As Bruce Lee said, you should honor tradition but not be bound by it, right? And that to me is a really cool line because it keeps you open-minded while still being able to see the pros and cons of each system. And that's why we do multiple martial arts systems, is because every system has a pro and a con. And so we train in multiple systems so we can fill the gaps in our arsenal.
I just think it's fun. I started studying Wing Chun during the pandemic, just doing like the forms online, and people are like, well, the forms aren't going to make you like better, and it's like, well, I just enjoy them, and now I know what's going on when I watch Ip Man. When I see him train, I'm like, oh, Buji, I understand what's happening. It's supposed to just moving their arms around, right? So, for me, that's a big motivator. I just think it's fun to learn different systems, and I really think it's interesting, like why things developed a certain way. I think that's really interesting to figure out, why art develops specific based off of a lot of times I do with like the situation at the time, who they were facing, and as a military professional, I mean, we kind of do the same thing. That the tactics evolve over time and in different regions based off of the situation. Mm-hmm. There's a saying, situation dictates tactics. And then one of my coworkers also has a favorite phrase of the narcissism of small differences. So when people are like 99% alike, they focus on the 1% that difference, and you see it everything from martial arts to religion to politics, where the people hate each other because of that small difference.
Right. Exactly.
So, any other follow-ups for the why before we start getting into the how?
Well, back to the differences. I mean, we can take a step back and look at just a larger scale of like humans too. Like this whole racism thing. We have so much more in common than we do have in difference. I mean, I think the difference between myself, I'm Asian, and someone who's from a European descent, it's like 0.02% of our DNA. Mm-hmm. And yet we focus so much on that 0.02%. And I think that takes me back to also just an outlook on life. The more arts that I train, the more different outlooks on life that I have. Because different arts, they approach a problem with a different solution, and I think that's also good for our mind as well too. It's just interesting for me to see. This art approaches their problem, and their problem might be different from a problem. Let's say Silat versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Their problems are different things, and so just to look at what they consider a problem and then a solution to those problems, that's also very interesting to me too. And I want to talk about the body as well too. Every art that I've trained is healthy for the body in different ways. Mm-hmm. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, really good for the core. You gotta hold everything tight together. It's great for developing conditioning as well too. Same thing with Muay Thai. On the flip side, something like Tai Chi and Bagua, for me, it's really good active recovery for me from my injuries from Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I think training in different arts, it trains different parts of your body. Taekwondo is really good for flexibility, especially lower body flexibility. And there hasn't been an art that I've trained that doesn't have some kind of health benefits, and yet they all give you a slightly different type of health benefit.
So I want to start talking a little bit about the how. So let's start off with this one. I think this was an easier question. So do you think I can train, like the place I currently train up as of this recording does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for grappling, right? It does striking, Jeet Kune Do, and then we have Kali for essentially weapons work. So those are three different ranges of combat. Do you think that's quote unquote acceptable or a decent way to train. Like, I'm not overlapping styles at this point. I'm not overlapping ranges, minus a little bit, right? I'm doing different ranges, different styles. So give me some thoughts on that.
I'll answer really quickly because Conrad has the most experience, so he'll probably go really in depth into it. But I think how you cross train is really dependent on how you learn as a human being. Because what I realized when I was younger, I had a totally different answer, but now I realize everybody learns in slightly different ways. And so you kind of have to find the best way to train it so that you can absorb it. I used to think like, oh, you should only do one style, get your black belt, and then train in another style, and then get your black belt, and then train in another style. But I realized there are people like you who could do like 5 things at once because they're just really good. And they just learn things like boom, 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 just so fast. And so I realized, okay, it should be based on how you learn as a human being. Because some people, there's the whole thing about like visual learner, kinesthetic, audio, all that stuff. So you have to figure out how you learn best, and then figure out what systems you want to learn and how to balance that out. But generally, yes, I agree with you. I think you should look at the ranges of combat and try to fill those gaps, like I said before. So you're filling in the grappling with jiu-jitsu, you're filling in the weapons work with kali, you're filling in the striking with jeet kune do and karate, and that's a great way to do it. I think for me, my problem was like I did Northern Shaolin, then I did Kempo karate, and then I did Southern Shaolin, and they're all really similar. And so the stuff I started learning started to bleed together, and I was like forgetting like, oh wait, is this the Northern Shaolin or is this the Kempo? And I started getting them confused because they're way too similar. And I had the same problem too when I shifted to Muay Thai because it's also striking art, and I wasn't doing like the Muay Thai round kick. I was kind of going back and reverting back, and I was like, I gotta erase all that, start from scratch, do it again. So I would recommend not doing things that are too similar, trying to keep it as segmented as possible. But Conrad will definitely have more thoughts on that.
I agree with you both, definitely. Training Jeet Kune Do, Kali, and some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, excellent. That's very well-rounded. And yeah, if you train 2 arts that are kind of too similar, it's easy to bleed into each other. You touched on this point that you learned the Muay Thai round kick, and then you were kind of using your old school round kick, which nothing wrong with old school karate or kung fu round kicks either. I think it's really important if somebody has a background in something to really try to go in as a white belt. And I see this quite a bit in my Muay Thai classes. Somebody comes in with some karate experience and they spar karate style, and they won't spar Muay Thai style, and they just kind of fall back to their karate style. And you're not learning anything new. Go back as a white belt and throw out all your karate, not for good. Just put it on pause and come in with an empty cup and really try to learn as a white belt. I see people in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Oh, we do this in Kung Fu. We do this. Put all that aside. It's cool. I don't believe there's any knowledge that you've learned in the past that's completely useless. But put it on pause, empty your cup, and you'll learn faster that way. And you'll learn more thoroughly that way as well too. So put on that white belt. Another issue people might have, just the time. So we don't want to style shame anyone and say, oh, you got to train different arts. If you only have time for one art, or if you only have passion for one art, that's totally cool too. And you have to look at your resources, whether that's your time or sometimes money might be an issue as well too, and your travel too. That kind of falls into the time and money part as well too. Do you have enough time to travel to different schools? That being said, if you have the opportunities, definitely train in different arts. And sometimes I get this in my the school where I teach. We have BJJ and Muay Thai. And the Muay Thai guys will say, oh, I just want to do Muay Thai and then get good at Muay Thai before I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They are completely different arts. You will not get confused. Don't worry about that. If you have the opportunity and you have the time, the money, and the health, train them both. It's same thing, vice versa with the jiu-jitsu guys. Oh, I just want to get good at this jiu-jitsu. And before, if you have the time, the opportunity, train them both. Because like we talked about earlier in the program, the benefits to your mind, to your body, to your spirit, it multiplies. For me anyways. training in different arts.
So we answered that was different ranges. What about if, let's say I want to train multiple styles in the same range, right? I think that's a little more nuanced question. So let's say I want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling and judo, right? Those are my three I'm silent. Or maybe I'm doing like you're doing all striking, or I've been studying a bunch of knife systems. So I'm studying I don't know how many knife systems right now. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Surprisingly, there's more than one out there, folks.
So what are your opinions on studying systems that have heavy overlap?
Yeah, I would take a cue from Conrad and really study it academically, because I think that will help you physically. I learned from Conrad very early on. He has scribblers, coil-bound scribblers, and he writes notes. He'll draw pictures, and I think that's really key, because you're getting it. You learn something, it's in your brain. You run it through your fingers, out the pen, onto paper, and that actually helps you memorize it better. So when things are too similar, like for example, you said jiu-jitsu, judo, and wrestling, those are all really similar. And if I were to do them all physically, I might end up doing a judo throw in wrestling, which those two are, similar, but according to the rule set, I may actually lose, right? Like if you land on your back in wrestling, you just lost, right? So writing it and taking it very academically, I think will help you physically.
Also, side note, Conrad, if you die early, I'm stealing your notes and publishing the Tao of Conrad Bui, and I'm going to make a lot of money because I've seen how much Bruce Lee's book sells for.
Good luck with that. I wouldn't use that as your retirement plan. I do want to say that that's okay. If that's your thing, you want to do judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and wrestling, that's fine. Just compartmentalize each of those classes. So don't bring your wrestling into the BJJ program, and don't bring your judo into the wrestling program. Compartmentalize, especially if you're a student. Try to compartmentalize. Yeah, it's all underneath grappling. That being said, you'll learn better, you'll learn faster, getting that going back to that white belt mentality in the wrestling class. You're going to do the wrestling. When wrestling's done and you go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, leave the wrestling at the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu door and just have the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu white belt on at that class. And then same thing in judo as well too. So just bring that white belt to each of those classes. And I think you can do it. If that's your thing, you have passion for it, you're going to be able to do that. Again, you're going to have passion if you're going to do all those three things, because it is grueling.
When I first started training, one of my first instructors was like, well, when you go to college, you just take one college course at a time. And I was like, that's actually a decent point. He's like, yep. So as long as you're, capable of, like you're saying, compartmentalizing some of it, and it's a lot easier to compartmentalize it if it's in different ranges. I do think that, that is true. Yeah. It's definitely a lot easier. And I think also your experience level, right? If you've been training Muay Thai for 20 years, and then you pick up another striking style, you can probably, your Muay Thai is pretty ingrained into your brain at that point, and it's probably easier to add another striking style at that point. Or, even, right, if you start doing Tai Chi, right, like I don't think you're going to be in the middle of a Muay Thai match and then start doing push hands. And
yeah, that brings up a good point. Is like, I don't think anybody should cross-train if they've never done any martial art before, because they don't have a foundation. And so if they've only done 6 weeks of wrestling, 6 weeks of jiu-jitsu, and 6 weeks of judo, it's all three going to suffer, right? So I would say get some sort of foundation. It doesn't have to be a black belt, it could be just like solid 6 months of one, and then you feel comfortable enough. All right, let's add another one. But I've noticed like people who dabble a lot, they are the jack of all trades and master of none, or in many cases they're crappy in all and just not even a jack. They didn't even get to that level yet. So
yeah. All right, so we talked about a bunch about some of the different styles and some of the benefits. What particular styles have you trained simultaneously, and why have you found that beneficial or maybe not beneficial?
A lot of styles I trained simultaneously. Back in the 80s, maybe 90s even, and luckily it's going away. One of the things that was not good was sometimes when I trained, I had to keep it secret from one of my teachers because they didn't want me training in other arts. And so I'm happy to see that that's not as common nowadays. I think it's more accepted to train different martial arts, luckily, nowadays. I think probably one of the pioneers that made that happen was Guru Dan Inosanto. He's a big pioneer of training multiple systems. For one, I think a benefit of training different styles all at once would be that I'm not bored. Sometimes maybe I have ADD, ADHD, or something like that, and I get bored with a certain system, and then I train another system, and that keeps me in the martial arts, and then I come back to the original system where I was bored, and I can see it from a different light, which changes things up for me as well too. So keeping it fresh, avoiding that burnout kind of thing, was one of my main benefits of training multiple systems all at once.
For me, I'd say the first good several years was I just did one system at a time, and it wasn't until I'd say the late 2000s or 2010s is when I really started questioning it. And it was because, like I said before, I believe firmly in like you should only do one system at a time, get your black belt, then do another one. So as I gotten older and more experienced, I realized like that's not necessary for everybody. And so as I've gotten older, I've done more simultaneous cross training. And so I was doing kind of the Southern Shaolin Kung Fu, which was more, it was not sport oriented as it was when I did Kempo Karate, because we would do open tournaments. So we did a lot of our sparring like sport style. And then when we started sparring in Kung Fu, they were actively trying to kick me in the balls and step on my feet. I'm like, what the hell? And so I had to modify, and I realized like, oh, okay, these guys are a little bit more Street Fighter-ish. And so I was doing Kung Fu, and then I was learning Silat and Filipino martial arts from Conrad, and that added a whole nother level of realism. Not necessarily realism, but a whole nother level of brutality. And so I was doing the Kung Fu and the Silat, and the Silat actually made my Kung Fu better, because Silat is concepts based, and Filipino martial arts are also concept based. And so I could take the concepts that I learned from Silat, apply it to Kung Fu, and be like, wow, my Kung Fu is so much better now, because a lot of the things that we did in Kung Fu, we just did it because that was the way that it was taught to us. But then because of Conrad and his Silat, he showed me like, oh, no. You don't look at just the block as a block. Look at it as a movement and see how you can alter it. So a block in another context became an attack. Or it could be a trap, or it could be this. Or if I had a blade in my hand, suddenly it's a whole nother ball game. And so that cross-training between the two systems really helped me understand self-defense and martial arts on a whole nother level. And then now, fast forward another 10 years, I'm doing Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, still doing the Silat, doing firearms, doing the combative stuff now with Tiga Tactics. And so doing all three at the same time, the benefits allow me, like you, Evan, just understanding the different ranges and filling in those gaps in my arsenal that they were big gaps way before, years before. And now I'm slowly filling them up, and it allows me to move more automatically, I would say, regardless of what range I'm in. Whereas before I had to think, oh man, when I did only Kung Fu and someone took me down, I'm like, okay, I can put my fingers in the eyes, and that's about it. That's the only option I had. So.
Yeah, I think, Conrad, you mentioned an important point of keeping people interested. I mean, that's so big, right? Because just the willingness and ability to show up and stay consistent and persistent over time is really, like, right? One of the sayings is what? A black belt's just a white belt that never gave up. I'm sure you've heard that one before. So staying interested is absolutely huge. I mentioned that the school I trained at has multiple ranges, so I think that was really good. But then off to the side, I like I mentioned, I really like knife stuff, and I found that the attributes from some of the other ranges of combat help with the knife stuff, right? So the ability to strike someone with a fist is similar to the ability to, the timing and distance to strike someone with a knife, right? Grappling and the ability to control someone, right? I mean, that's huge, especially if you're unarmed against a knife, or even some of the knife systems, there's a grappling component for using those systems. So I feel like it's just kind of helped with a little bit of everything, and attributes developed from one will help another one, and then like a little more of the traditional like Kali, the footwork and stuff like that has helped. Again, has helped with moving in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's helped with moving in Jeet Kune Do. I feel like a lot of those attributes and those ability to do multiple things with your body at the same time. Because you ever like grapple with someone new, they're like, all right, bring my feet close to my butt, grab the arm, secure the other side, bridge, everything's like step by step versus someone who's more experienced. It happens all like simultaneously. All the moving parts are there at once. So I feel like it just kind of helps with brain health, right? Overall. Yes. All right. Any final thoughts on training multiple styles in, why, how, etc.?
I think also thinking about our age and stage in life can help us plan on what style we might want to train as well too. I think like Taekwondo is a great art for younger people, teenagers and down, or even up a little bit as well too. And as we get older, or as I get older, I start to appreciate some of the softer styles. I think when we're young, go ahead and do all the hard stuff, get all those out of the way, whether that's Taekwondo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai. And as we get older, we can transition into softer ways of doing things. And even if you just train one style like Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that's kind of strenuous, as we get older, I think it's important to look at it as a marathon and not a sprint, and figure out ways that we can train smarter and also safer for us as well too. So if you're just training one art, you might have to kind of modify it. But if you're training multiple arts, you can start picking, this art is healthy for me as I approach these ages. I've learned Tai Chi and Bagua since I was young, and I'm starting to really appreciate those arts. And the arts that are more strenuous, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, I have to modify those. Like we talked about early on, no more hard sparring for me. I appreciate my brain cells as well too. And grappling, I'll be a little careful about who I'll grapple with sometimes, depending on their size and their aggressiveness as well too. So thinking about the age and the stage in our life might also be a good way for you to plan how you're going to cross-train.
Yeah, just a quick summary of the tips that we gave is: number one, definitely cross-train if you can. Number two, try to pick arts that are very different from each other if possible. And then three, keep an open mind, because you're going to learn a lot of really cool stuff. It's not just kicking, punching, grappling. It's also the culture, the language, and all the cool things that you'll learn along the way that's associated with those styles.
And the last thing I'll kind of add on to that is I feel like it's made me a better instructor, because when I talk to someone, I may be training someone in a style that they maybe, or a system or a range of combat that they may not normally do, I can compare and contrast things and use analogies that fit with them better. So I was working with someone, again, on knife stuff, who's a much higher rank than me in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I was using analogies for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and like every time I use it, he'd be like, oh yeah, and he'd nod his head. Like it fit into his mold of techniques, and it fit into his mold of like how he sees the martial arts world. All right, let's close it out. Any final shout outs we want to give?
Wow, there would be, if we were to shout out all the people I've trained with or who trained me, it'd be way too long. So I just want to, general thank you to all my instructors and all my classmates. I really appreciate it. You guys helping me become better and get to where I am now.
What can you say? The saying, it takes a village, and so just like Patrick, thank you to everyone who's helped me along my journey as well too, and the journey continues.
Absolutely, and check the show notes down below. We'll drop some links. Again, if you want to train with Tiga Tactics online, we'll have those links down in the show notes below. Keep a look on the Tiga Tactics website, and make sure you're following our social media pages. We'll be putting out updates to upcoming seminars and webinars. We've got the combative conditioning webinar. It should be coming out after this episode. Making sure we're not giving you old information here, but that's August 18th. So it's a Sunday. So make sure you jump in for that. Again, go check that out. I will be talking about physical fitness and basically martial arts and how to peak and prepare for that and for actual fighting. So please check that out. Follow us along, and we will see you all in the next episode.